The grand phase, awakening of reality. So far, the basic content of the idea of changing recognition has been more of a psychological approach rather than a new age worldview. Generally, therapy with psychological counselors involves talk therapy, but therapy incorporating EFT tapping is also beginning to take root. Group dynamics therapy has evolved considerably compared to before. Cognitive activation therapy and behavior activation therapy are actually being used as therapeutic tools in the United States. For me, understanding the theory and structure of cognitive activation and behavior activation was not difficult. According to the counselor, it takes a long time for ordinary people to understand it. For me, it felt like a confirmation that what I already knew was being logically explained. It was good to know that my perspectives and understanding matched the academic world. Cognitive activation and behavior activation teach us that we can change our own recognition and habits. People often say, change your way of thinking, or change your perspective. I have heard this many times throughout my life. Each time I thought, it's easy to say, but how? I understand what they mean, but saying it doesn't make it easy to change. The problem is not knowing how to change. If someone had told me as a child, thoughts and behaviors are habits. If you do this, you can positively change. I could have changed much faster. It's all about how things are conveyed, which also relates to recognition. The goal of the grand phase is to change recognition. When I first heard about the grand phase, I was puzzled. I understood that it was beyond my current comprehension, but I had many questions. It was around the time when the concept of entering the 5D, the fifth wave density world, was frequently mentioned. When I started to consciously focus on 5D, I noticed changes in my ESP, extrasensory perception, senses. Various shifts began occurring in my life, and I realized that my ESP recognition was starting to change clearly. Although I have experienced many shifts in consciousness before, this one was distinctly different, making me doubt myself at times. ESP sense is related to cognition, and in the academic world, the term metacognition is extensively studied. Simply put, people with developed ESP senses process information differently from ordinary people. ESPs tend to process sensory information faster. ESP sense is unique to each person and varies from individual to individual. It mainly differs in the angle, range, breadth, and density of recognition. It's important not to consider people with developed ESP senses as special because their physiological structures are the same as those of the general population. There is no physiological difference. Some people say, I don't have ESP senses, but that's just a misconception. Everyone uses ESP senses in their daily lives. They just don't recognize, notice, or admit it. It can be rephrased as not believing in one's potential. I have taught ESP sense development to countless people, and it's something anyone can develop. Moreover, it can be developed relatively easily. Those who naturally develop it stand out, but many people have intentionally developed and learned it. ESP sense is something anyone can develop and enhance. People with developed ESP senses can process more delicate areas more broadly, multidimensionally, and in 3 dimensions. What distinguishes people with developed ESP senses from the majority of ordinary people? It's the difference in recognition. This is similar to the difference between the currently dominant binary equation and the photon computer equation. The binary equation is 2-dimensional and linear, while the photon equation is simultaneous and 3-dimensional. The development of ESP sense is related to the openness of chakras and meridians, the rise of Kundalini, and its wave density. Everything is about the difference in density of vibration equals density of consciousness. The reality experience changes based on whether the density of consciousness is shallow or deep and within each density's frequency range. People with developed ESP senses live in the same reality as those who don't, but in a slightly different reality. They recognize more subtle areas. Since the recognition of reality's width, depth, and density is not the same, they experience it more multidimensionally. The grand phase progresses with the rise in Earth's density. The rise in Earth's overall density affects the rise in the density of our human consciousness. In this process, the tendency of reality becomes 3-dimensional because our consciousness changes from a flat state to a 3-dimensional state. The higher the density of our consciousness, the more reality transforms into a multidimensional and multi-layered world. We begin to notice the fineness, depth, and density of reality. What happens when we enter this realm? Reality begins to awaken within us. Even if I write awakening of reality, it may not resonate. It means entering a state of consciousness more awake than the present, thus entering a more awakened reality. The concept of awakened reality might be hard to grasp. Reality is made of consciousness. When consciousness becomes three-dimensional, reality also becomes three-dimensional. In this process, reality begins to interact directly with us. The focus of ascension is to raise the current Earth's wave density from 3.5 to the fourth wave density and then to the fifth wave density. Why does the vibration rise? Because the Earth is entering the wave of photons emitted from the center of the galaxy. Additionally, E.T. civilizations are working multidimensionally to help Earth's ascension. Commonly, they engage in enlightenment activities to elevate the spirituality of Earthlings through channels and contacts. This is not something that started recently, but has been ongoing throughout history. The purpose of enlightenment activities for humanity is to promote the awakening of consciousness. Various angles and approaches are taken to inspire human consciousness and help transform into higher beings, involving ordinary people, religious figures, and scientists. Furthermore, geoengineering is also conducted to raise the planetary vibration. ET civilizations possess technology capable of changing the planetary environment. One of the activities conducted by ET civilization alliances is the activation of the sun. By causing solar winds, they raise the density within Earth's atmosphere, thereby increasing the density of Earth's electromagnetic field, causing plasma to enter the ground and increasing the density inside the Earth. While individual level ascensions have occurred, they were extremely rare in terms of numbers. This time, the aim is a bold plan for mass ascension involving as many people as possible, not just 1 or 2, 100, or 1,000 people. There are various theories of ascension, with the most well-known being that humanity would ascend in 2012. Other theories include transforming into light bodies or migrating to a second Earth. Realistically, it will take a long time for the majority of humanity to fully transform into light bodies. The concept of light bodies can be confusing, often leading to strange images. Transforming from the current physical body to a pure energy state is not impossible, but unlikely to happen immediately. It is possible to ascend by leaving the physical body, being conscious while the body leaves, becoming an existence of pure consciousness. The transition to another vibrational domain or dimension through physical death is not new. How ascension is perceived greatly varies based on recognition. The key to the current ascension is ascending while maintaining the physical body. Initially, maintaining the physical body while becoming semi-energy and eventually transcending the body to become an energetic being is a reasonable progression. It is possible to ascend with the physical body intact. I personally experienced ancient Egyptian-style ascension with E.T. help in 2012. With E.T. help, ancient Egyptian-style ascension is possible. Those familiar with the religious views of ancient Egypt know about the Book of the Dead. This term is a significant misunderstanding. It is actually the Book of Coming Forth by Day, but early archaeologists simplistically linked it to the afterlife and changed the original name. This is a well-known story in ancient Egyptian archaeology. It is extremely difficult for ordinary people to understand the ancient Egyptian ascension view of the Book of the Dead. The reason is the difference in recognition angles. In Egyptology, it is directly linked to the afterlife, which is a very simplistic viewpoint. The reason is that the Book of the Dead is understood to be for burial purposes. While it is related to burial, that is not its sole purpose. The focus here is, where did the idea of the Book of the Dead originate? The most convincing explanation is that someone temporarily visited the afterlife in a near-death experience and returned to tell about it. Near-death experiences are reported by a vast number of people worldwide, and they are academically researched today, so they cannot be denied. The Tibetan Buddhist Book of the Dead is also famous like the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead. Tibetan Buddhism and ancient Egyptian religion originate from the same worldview, so it is not surprising that there are similarities. In fact, there should be similarities. Why is the ancient Egyptian Book of Coming Forth by Day recognized as the Book of the Dead? It is because most archaeologists and the general public want to understand death or affirm the afterlife. The Book of Coming Forth by Day is actually a guide for ancient pharaohs to meet their gods through ascension. Simply put, it is a book describing how to reach the gods while still alive without dying. Writing about ancient Egyptian gods easily connects to the general image of gods, but their gods are different from what we humans think. Ancient Egyptian gods equals E.T.s. When I passed through the ancient Egyptian ascension, I met two E.T.s. One of them joked, "Maybe I'm a god," showing their deep knowledge of humanity. It is probably because many people in the past met them and thought they were gods. In my case, the preparation was long and I had extensive recognition and experience with E.T.s, so it wasn't as impactful. But for ancient or ordinary people, the shock of the encounter would inevitably lead them to think they were gods. Given the simple mental framework of beyond humans equals gods, it is a natural conclusion. When we mention the gods of ancient Egypt, it's easy to connect them with the general image of gods, but their gods are different from what we humans imagine. The gods of ancient Egypt equals E.T.s. When I passed through the ancient Egyptian-style ascension, I met two E.T. beings. One of them joked, "Am I a god?" which showed how well they understood humanity. It's likely because many people in the past have met them and thought they were gods. In my case, the preparation was extensive, and I had a broad recognition and experience with ETs, so the impact was minimal. However, for ancient people or ordinary individuals, the shock would have been so great that it's no wonder they thought these beings were gods. Given the simple mental framework of beyond humans equals gods, this is a natural conclusion. Readers who continue to read The Alchemy of Light of New Horus in the Sky will understand that the ET civilization alliances I have contacted completely understand the structure of the human body. They know not only the mechanisms and structures of physical organs, but also the subtle realms of the etheric body, which includes the invisible body and the structure of consciousness. They possess consciousness technology far more advanced and subtle than current human medicine. The place where they exist seems to be an etheric world with much higher density than Earth's. Returning to the process of the grand phase, what begins to change first as Earth's vibrational density rises? The performance of the physical body, the etheric realm, including meridians, and the conscious sphere. These are interconnected, so as Earth's vibrations rise, these bodies begin to transform. Simply put, they become higher performance. What does their higher performance affect? Mainly the functioning of neurotransmitters and the endocrine system. In simple terms, the formulation of neurotransmitters and endocrine hormones is upgraded. What happens when the formulation of neurotransmitters and endocrine hormones is upgraded? Perceptual, sensory, and sensory functions change. To what are the changes in perceptual, sensory, and sensory functions connected? The brain's function. Simply put, the brain becomes more awakened. When the brain awakens to a certain level, perceptual, sensory, and sensory functions, including recognition, also change. What happens when perceptual, sensory functions, and recognition change? The reality we experience changes. The important part here is that the changes in reality we can experience impact the collective reality. Given the current density of consciousness, it's hard to perceive reality itself as being conscious and moving. This is because the majority of people do not understand what reality is. However, reality is indeed moving. Collective consciousness equals reality is far larger and more powerful than individual consciousness. Because the majority of humanity's consciousness is not awakened, the collective reality of humanity creates a very chaotic reality. We, as a collective, are not awakened. And because the density of our consciousness is shallow, reality itself is not awakened. As the grand phase progresses and the vibrational domain rises, reality becomes more multifaceted, delicate, and three-dimensional, eventually transforming into something holographic. What happens when we enter a holographic reality? We become able to create reality. This is the goal of the grand phase.